Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Right now, we're discussing Rivers crisis, PDP governors to sue block state of emergency. The federal government has officially received a suit filed by 11 governors of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, challenging the state of emergency declared in Rivers State by President Bola Tinubu. The suit questions the legality of the president's actions and specifically whether he has the constitutional authority to suspend an elected state government and replace it with a sole administrator. The PDP governors representing various states have approached the Supreme Court to seek a ruling on whether the president can lawfully suspend a governor, deputy governor, and state assembly under the pretext of declaring a state of emergency. They argued that the move threatens the principles of constitutional federalism and undermines the powers of elected state officials. The federal government has been given 14 days to respond to the suit as legal preparations begin. The case is set to address significant constitutional questions, including whether such actions violate the 1999 Constitution. The National Assembly has supported the President's decision to impose the state of emergency. And joining us this morning to have a discussion on this is Professor Chris NWAOKOBIA Jr., who's the convener, Country First Movement. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure to be here.
Yes, so lovely to have you here. All right, so we're discussing Rivers State and the crisis. First things first, a state of emergency was, declared by the president. And a lot of people have been asking, does the president have the constitutional right, to be able to impose this? Let's start with that. Do you think, first, what does the declaring a state of emergency entail in Nigeria according to the 1999 Constitution? And does the president have that right to do that?
Let me say first, Rume, that what people are up against is not the declaration of a state of emergency. What they're up against is the latitude of the powers enforced by Mr. President. Can you declare a state of emergency? Yes. Under what condition? When there is threat to peace and security, when the state is overawed, when not declaring one would create monumental damage and insecurity. And then the question now is, when you declare a state of emergency, do you have the right under the law to suspend the democratic institution in the state? And that has been the argument of so many people. The NBA has said it's unconstitutional to sack a governor or suspend a governor, when in actuality the Constitution provides for separation of powers, provides for constitutional federalism, where the president heads the federal government and the sub-regional governments are headed by the state and the local government. And does the president have a right under the enforcement of the provisions of Section 305 of the Constitution to sack a governor or suspend one? And the argument is very simple. It is not right. Unfortunately, because we have a National Assembly that is at best a rubber stamp of the executive. I'm
going to get there.
And would perhaps, if Mr. President chooses to turn you to a man, the National Assembly would say it's all right. That's how bad it is. And that's the argument that we have everywhere. Now, it's beautiful that the PDP governors have risen up to the ante, because if you have issues with the interpretation of the Constitution, you have a right to approach the Supreme Court directly, and that's what they have done with the suit SC/CV/329/2025. What they're trying to do is ask the Supreme Court to interpret the latitude of the powers of Mr. President, ditto the declaration of a state of emergency. And I think that the Supreme Court, God willing, will do justice to it.
Okay, so one thing that you said is obviously if there's threats to maybe the region or the state, then you can impose or you can declare a state of emergency. In the president's speech, one of the things he said was, the vandalization of the pipelines. Do you think that was enough, to even declare a state of emergency? And then if we look at antecedents, there's been a state of emergency declared in one state before, but the difference is that governor was not suspended. He was still there. So how do you think the president could have done this better in this case?
You sounded quite clairvoyant. Let me say clearly that what I wanted to bring to the fore was what happened under President Jonathan when he had to declare a state of emergency over the states of Borno and Yobe. And the reasons were profound. He needed to tackle the issues of insurgency and security challenges. But when he did not suspend the governors of the two major states of the Northeast. Very unfortunately, instead of learning from, and that's where you understand that what is happening in Rivers is basically politics and the politics of 2027.
I like the word politics.
Sadly, Mr. President thinks that he needs Nyesom Wike to win re-election. Don't forget what happened in 2023. So he must dance to his tune, perhaps, so that he wins the votes of Rivers State, either by crook or subterfuge. But what is very important here, as we talk, is the fact that if you say we have a democracy, then the rule of law must be preeminent.
Yes.
Then the rule of law must be adhered to. Very unfortunately, everything about the declaration of the state of emergency that happened on the 18th of March is unconstitutional, illegal, and against the intent of the Constitution. So I think that it is salutary for the 11 PDP governors to have gone to the Supreme Court to interpret the provisions of the law. I think it's also very important for us to say to Mr. President, perhaps the Attorney General of the Federation, that when you have a constitutional federalism, nothing in the intent of the Constitution gives the right to one arm of that federalism, the federal government, to suspend a state governor. It's antithetical. It's against the spirit and intent of the Constitution.
Okay, so let's talk about what even got us here in the first place. You know, the people of River State. And it's quite sad because you know how they say when two elephants fight, the grass suffers. And it seems like it's the people of River State that are bearing the brunt of all of this. Nyesom Wike, who is the minister of the FCT, former governor of River State, and Siminalayi Fubara, they've just been in this little ruckus, and that's where we are. So, of course, a lot of people are saying this is a, you know, just a power play at work at the moment. But with Nyesom Wike and with Siminalayi Fubara, do you think they could have mended fences? Do you think even with the House of Assembly, all parties could have done a bit more to prevent this in the first place?
Yes, I think so. But very unfortunately, the minister of the FCT was more interested in the power play. We saw the efforts of the state governor, who is on the quiet side, to reach in peace and rapprochements with even the State House of Assembly. And I say with the greatest sense of seriousness that you don't, because you want to be called the godfather, put your state in trouble. I don't know how happy Nyesom Wike is with the state of emergency as declared. He's a lawyer, he should know better. And by extent, he's even a member of the body of benchers. So I think that he should understand that what has happened in River State is against the spirit of democracy, is against the spirit of the Constitution, and is against due process. But very unfortunately, what bothers me, Rume, is the fact that even the administrator is beginning to consistently overreach himself. I hear he's appointing sole administrators for the local government. I hear he's making appointments that is against the spirit of the appointment he got, albeit unlawfully, albeit illegally. But, you know, I think that what is clearly up in River State is the sole administrator trying to institutionalize Wike's voice in political offices, and then ensure that maybe after 6 months, when that is if the Supreme Court refuses to do the needful, when Fubara returns, he will be at the mercy of Wike and his boys. But I do want to say here that if we truly care about this democracy for which people died, for which some of us were in jail, different detention facilities, if we truly care about the life of this democracy, Mr. President must rise to the ante. And I say this without equivocation, because River State has become the Achilles heels of our democracy. If nothing is done early enough to correct the anomaly and the error, then River State will become the greatest individual threat to the sustenance and survival of democracy.
So from Rivers State, something happened in Osun State, right? And, you know, a lot of people were also calling, the opposition were calling for a state of emergency. So when we see things like this, you think of posterity, you think of what would happen in future and what actions will be taken. What do you think of the political space in Nigeria and, you know, our democracy? Would you say that we're really practicing true democracy? Because, like you said now, the sole administrator is already, you know, fixing things, doing whatever. So it may seem as though we're living in a country whereby anything goes, anybody can come anywhere and do whatever. How do you think we can, you know, take back the reins when it comes to practicing true democracy in Nigeria?
Rume, let me say this clearly, that at best what we have is civilian rule. At best, that's what we have. Because democracy suggests a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And it suggests that leadership should be predicated on the rule of law. But if you don't have that, then what you have is a tendency shifting towards despotism and dictatorship. And very unfortunately, those who, along with us, talked about the need for democracy and the rule of law have become pseudo-democrats, have become very untrue to the preachments that they made over the years. And I say this without fear of querulous critics. If the APC truly means well, if the APC is truly progressive, then we're working at saying that we have a one-party state. You see, it's become so painful that at every level you see politicians losing faith in their parties because they believe that if you were to run on the card of any other party but the APC in 2027, you're very likely to lose, you know. And when we talk about the need to deepen the frontiers of democracy, we're saying to Mr. President and his party, the need for the rule of law to have primacy is now.
Yeah.
The need for the rule of law to be strictly adhered to is now. And in the case of Ojukwu and the Attorney General of the Federal Republic of Nigeria a long time ago, it was advised that the federal government, the government should be the chief respecter of the law.
Yes.
Because should there be impunity and anarchy, the government will suffer the most. But very unfortunately, I wonder why this government doesn't think that the first thing to do is to obey the law and defend our democracy. I believe that, like you noted, posterity will ask us questions about what we did. Interestingly, records are there. We saw the declaration of a state of emergency under President Jonathan, and he did not suspend the democratic institutions. Those, the one that happened under President OBJ, Olusegun Obasanjo, where he suspended, was ruled illegal by the courts of law. And I think that that's what the PDP governors are testing now, whether the Supreme Court will rise to the ante and help defend the rule of law and defend our democracy.
So what would you like to see? Of course, I'm sure you are for your people, the people of Rivers State, because like I said, they're the ones who are bearing the brunt of this all. And you've even seen them, you know, come out. Most of them were in the streets talking about this. One actress, Hilda Dokubo, you know, spoke extensively about this and saying all of these are distractions, especially for Siminala Ifubara when he wants to rerun in 2027. For you now and your people, what would you want to see from, you know, all of this brouhaha that has been happening in Rivers State, and how can we move forward?
I wrote a piece immediately after Mr. President declared the state of emergency. I wrote a piece, and in that piece I said to Mr. President, borrowing the words of Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, that the time is always right to do right. No matter how far gone you are on the wrong track, decency, integrity demands that you turn back and walk on the right track. And I've said to Mr. President and those who mind the presidency that it is not a show of weakness to rescind a wrong decision. It's not a show of weakness to come back and say to Nigerians, I think we didn't do right with the declaration of a state of emergency, and we're restoring the democratic institutions in Rivers State, and we're looking at the path of rapprochement between the minister of the FCT and the governor. You know, it's not too expensive to do that. If you truly are a Democrat, if you truly are progressive, that's the right thing to do. You know, because like you noted, the state is the victim here.
Yeah.
The citizens of River State are the victim here. Because if you have an illegal persona superintending a state, then it's against the intent of the Constitution.
Yeah.
And here again, because even the declaration of state of emergency did say that the administration would not be responsible for new bills and all that. But as you and I talk, we're hearing that the administrator is about to present a financial bill before, and I don't know who is going to present it to. So I think that my advice this morning to the Minister of the FCT is to rescind his position and understand that he must go back to Mr. President and say, we can't have illegality and unconstitutionality in River State. The time to have due process, decorum, and the rule of law prevail in River State is now. And who will benefit? All of us. The nation, our democracy, the state, and the political operators will be the lead beneficiaries of rectitude. And I think that that's what we need now. That's what Mr. President must do. That's what all of us of democracy must do. Insist on Mr. President rescinding that state of emergency and calling back the governor and the Democratic
Fantastic. Well, we hope that that's what would happen, and it's great that the governors obviously have approached the Supreme Court, and we're just going to wait for that ruling. Like you've said, the time to do right is now. There's never a wrong time. Just do what is right by the people. And if we're talking about true democracy, it's important that we put everything in place that can help, factor that in. So hopefully, maybe River State would just be back, the governor would be back, the House of Assembly as well, and we'll just see what happens. This is where we have to wrap it up on the show right now. Chris, I want to say thank you for coming. It's been a pleasure having you and having a conversation with you this morning. We're speaking with Professor Chris NWAOKOBIA Jr. He's the convener Country First Movement, and we've just been speaking on the River State crisis and the fact that 11 PDP governors have approached the Supreme Court on the state of emergency. This is where we have to wrap it up on the show. Thank you so much for having a breakfast with us. My name is Rume Paulson. I'll see you again on Monday. Have a wonderful weekend. Good morning.